In this section, you will learn repetition in coding. First, I'll talk about while statement. Repetition statements allow us to execute a statement multiple times. Often, they are referred to as loops. Like conditional statements, they are controlled by Boolean expressions. Java has three kinds of repetition statements: while, do, and for loops. So do and for loops are discussed in chapter 6, and here I will talk about a while loop. A while statement has the following syntax: while and parentheses, Inside the parentheses, Boolean expression should be here. It is the condition. And this is the statement for while loop. If the condition is true, then this statement is executed. Then condition is evaluated again. If it is still true, the statement is executed again. This statement is executed repeatedly until the condition becomes false. This is the flowchart of a while loop. Condition evaluated. If true, then execute this statement and then go to the condition evaluation again, and condition evaluation is proceed, and then if it is true, then execute this statement and then go to condition again. If this is true, statement is executed. So while condition is true, this statement is executed. And if condition is false, then now the condition is false, then the control goes like this. Here is an example of a while statement. At first, the variable count is 1, and while count is less than or equal to 5, these two statements are executed. So at first count is 1, so count variable is 1, and this is true. Since count is 1, this is true, then system.out.println count. Count is printed out like this. Count is printed out like this. Because now count is 1, so 1 is printed out, and then count is increased by 1. So count is increased by 1, so count now is 2. And then go to the condition again. Go to condition again. Still count is less than or equal to 5, so print out count, and count is increased by 1 like this. And then go to the condition again. Count is still less than or equal to 5, so count is printed out 3, and count is increased by 1 like this. And still condition is true, so count is printed out 4, and count is increased, that is 5. And then still count is less than or equal to 5, so 5 is printed out like this, and then count becomes 6. See here, now this condition does not hold. Since count is 6, this does not hold, so while loop is done. So the next control will go here. Can you understand this one? Okay. If the condition of a while loop is false initially, the statement is never executed. Do you understand? What if the condition, let me show you. What if the count is 10? What if count is 10? Then this condition cannot be held at the first place. So these two statements can never be executed. It means like that. Therefore, the body of a while loop will execute 0 or more times. This is a program that calculates the sum from 1 to 10 using while loop. So this program will compute this. To do this, we need to have two variables, a and sum. Sum will have sum, and a will be used for looping. At first a is 1 and sum is 0. So a is 1 and sum is 0 like this. While a is less than or equal to 10, we will do this repeatedly. Sum is increased by a and a is increased by 1. Sum is increased by a and a is increased by 1 repeatedly. So let me show you. At first a is 1 and sum is 0. This condition is true since a is 1. Then sum is increased by a and a is increased by 1. So sum is increased by a, sum becomes 1, and a increased by 1, a becomes 2. Since a is 2, this condition holds. So sum is increased by a, it becomes 3, and a is increased by 1, so 3. And then still this holds. So sum is increased by a. So 6. This one increased by 1, so 4. Still the condition holds. Sum is increased by a, so 10, it becomes 10, and a becomes 5, and sum becomes 5 will be added to sum, so 15, and becomes 6, and sum is increased by 6, so 21, and a becomes 7, and still a is less than or equal to 10. So sum is increased by a, so 28, and a becomes 8. 28 plus 8 is 36, and a becomes 9, and still the condition holds. 36 plus 9 is 45. 9 is increased by 1, so 10, and then 10 will be added to sum. So it becomes 55, and a becomes 11. Now, the condition is false. See? So while loop is done, and then print out sum, which is 55. Can you understand this one? It is very important for you to understand this process. And here, the important thing is that a starts from 1, and then a is increased by 1 until a becomes 10. So this is the initial state of a. This is the final state of a. And from 1 to 10, between these two values, a is increased by 1. So a is 1, a is increased by 1 until a becomes 10. So the value of a is very important. A can make this while loop works. Let's see this example. This time we try to find the sum of even numbers less than or equal to 100. You only need to modify this part. So it starts from 2, and it is increased by 2 until a becomes to 100. Then a will become 2, 4, 6, 8, something like that. So we can find the sum of even numbers. We can also write code like this. This is also sum of even numbers. It starts from 1, and it increased by 1 up to a becomes 100. In the process, we need a is even or not. So here we determine a is even or not. To determine if a given number is even, dividing the number by 2 and the remainder is 0, then it is an even number. Can you understand that? If a is even number, then the remainder of a divided by 2 will be 0, right? So this is that expression. The remainder of a divided by 2 equals 0. Equal has a 2 equal sign, equals 0. Then it means a is even number. Then a will be added to sum, like this. If this is becomes 1, if a divided by 2, the remainder of a divided by 2 is 1, then a is odd number. So this is very important expression. If you want some number is an even number or odd number, then you can use this expression. This time, let's look at the code that loops 10 times to read an integer and find the sum. The variable count stores the number of times the loop is executed. So at first count is 1. It will increase by 1 until it goes up to 10. So inside the loop, ask the user to input one integer. Then the integer will be stored to data, and then the data will be added to sum. So here, while looping 10 times, the computer reads an input into data and then add that value into sum. Here is a sample output. So at first, the computer will ask, enter integer 1, then the user input this one, 10, and then loop again. So enter second number, 20, enter third number, 11, something like that. So until the computer receives 10 numbers, the computer continuously add the newly entered number into the sum. So finally, we can have the sum of 10 numbers. This code is a modification of the previous code. This takes 10 integers and finds the sum of positive numbers. So this code also loops 10 times and receives an integer. And while looping like this, count is 1 and increased by 1 and goes up to 10. And while looping, only positive numbers are added to the sum. So we need to find the data entered is positive number or not. So we need if statement. If data is greater than 0, then sum is increased by data. So this is a modification from the previous code. So after receiving one integer, we need an if statement like this. And this is the sample code. Only positive number are added together. So the result is 52. This code takes 5 integers and compute to the average of the 5 values. This is almost the same as the previous one, but we need average calculation. So at first, from count 1 and increased by 1 and up to 5, we receive data and add the data to total. And after while loop, we just calculate the average like this. So this is almost the same example from the previous one. Let's look at some examples of loop processing. A loop that can be used to maintain a running sum. A sentinel value is a special input value that represents the end of input. I'll explain this one with an example. This code continues to receive inputs until 0 is entered and calculates the average of the numbers received. This is a sample code. The code receives integers like this until 0 is entered. So if 0 is entered, then loop cannot be executed anymore, and finally compute the average of these values. Here, if 0 is entered here, then the while loop cannot be executed. If value is not 0, then while will be executed. And the variable count will be used to count the number of loop execution. So each time the loop goes through, count is incremented by 1. And after this loop, if count is 0, this means that the first value of this variable value is 0. So this means that the while loop never been executed. So no values were entered is printed out. Else this means that count is not 0. This means that there are several, at least one data entered. At that time, we need to find the average like this. And we use decimal format class to print out up to 3 decimal places. I'll talk about input validation. A loop can also be used for input validation, making a program more robust. It is generally a good idea to verify that input is valid when possible. So we will see this code soon. This code demonstrates the use of a while loop for input validation. This code reads the number of wins out of 12 games and finds the winning percentage. So the input should be between 0 and 12. If the input is negative number or greater than 12, it is a wrong input. This is a sample output. At first, it reads one data. The data should be 0 to 12 within this range. If negative 5 is entered, then this is not in this range, so invalid input message is printed out. And then enter another one. This time 13. 13 is also out of this range. So error message will be printed out and then receive another integer. This time 7 is okay because it is between 0 and 0 and 12. So winning percentage is computed like this. So this means that the user can make mistakes when input the number. So the code needs to handle these cases appropriately. Here, at first, it received the number and own variable will save that. And this part, this is important. If own value is negative or greater than 12, then error message will be printed out and receive another data. So this part is we don't know until it stops, until we have data from 0 to 12, right? And then we will compute the ratio of the value. And to print out with percentage, with percent sign like this, with percent sign, we use number format.getPercentInstance method. Let's talk about infinite loops. The body of a while loop eventually must make the condition false. If not, it is called an infinite loop, which will execute until the user interrupts the program. This is a common logical error. You should always double-check the logic of a program to ensure that your loops will terminate normally. This is an example of an infinite loop. At first, count is 1. And this condition is true, so count is printed out, so 1 is printed out, and count minus 1 becomes new count, so count is 0. So 0 is also less than or equal to 25, so 0 is printed out, and count becomes minus 1. Minus 1 is less than or equal to 25. Minus 1 is printed out and count becomes minus 2. Minus 2 is less than or equal to 25. Can you see the pattern here? Count decreases every time the while loop is executed. So count cannot be greater than 25. This loop ends when count is greater than 25, right? So this is an infinite loop. This loop will continue executing until interrupted. If you press the Ctrl C, then it means interruption, or until an underflow error occurs. This means that if this calculation continuously, then we cannot calculate anymore because underflow occurs. Loops can be nested. Similar to nested if statements, loops can be nested as well. That is, the body of a loop can contain another loop. For each iteration of the outer loop, the inner loop iterates completely. We will see this code later. This code prints a multiplication table. This is the output. There is two loops. One loop is inside another loop. See? So this is the outer while loop and this is the inner while loop. In the outer while loop, the row starts 1 and increased by 1 and goes up to 10. So the outer loop will loop 10 times. And inside the while loop, there is the inner while loop here. In inner while loop also starts from 1 and increased by 1 and goes up to 10. So inner loop also execute 10 times. When row is 1, the inner while loop will execute 10 times. Do you understand this one? When row is 1, this is true, so this part will be executed. At that time, inside row will executed 10 times, right? So when row equal 1, row is 1, then call becomes 1 to 10. So call becomes 1 to 10 times, like this. And then row increased by 1, so row is 2, row becomes 2, and the condition holds, so the inner loop will be executed 10 times again, like this. So if R is 1, this line will be executed, will be printed out. And R is 2, the second line will be printed out. Okay? And while printed out these 10 numbers, there is the inner loop result. Okay? So this is the outer loop. This is the outer loop execution. And this is the inner loop execution. This is the same code as the previous one, print out multiplication tables, but this time we used printf statement to print out like this, very neatly. This is an example from the textbook. It is a nested loop, see, outer while and inside while. This code tests strings to see if they are palindromes. A palindrome is a string of characters that reads the same forward or backward. These are examples of palindromes. Radar and from backward, radar is the same. And this is the next page. This is a sample output of this code. So I hope you analyze this code by yourself. And let's do the quick check. How many times will the string here be printed? This means that how many times this statement will be executed. Think about it. Since this is a nested loop, we should be very careful. Here, in outer loop, count 1 is 1 and increased by 1 up to 10. So outer loop will be executed 10 times, right? And inside the loop, there is one more while loop. It starts from 1 and increased by 1. It goes up to 20. but this time it is less than 20. This means that it will go up to 19. So 19 times. So total 10 times 19 is 190 times. Will be this one will be printed out.